Good evening, everybody. A warm welcome to you on your screens. We are very happy to have you with us, and I'm really glad to give a warm welcome for this event on cybersecurity and the transatlantic between cooperation and competition. The evening tonight, the event is a joint project of Amerikahaus Munich and the US Consulate General in Munich. My name is Maike Zwingenberger, and I'm the Executive Director of the Amerikahaus in Munich. And this event is part of the Transatlantic Innovation Week organized by US Mission Germany. Cybersecurity is one of the most pressing issues, not only in the political and military fields, but also in the corporate world. And I'm delighted that we can offer a dialogue with three very knowledgeable speakers in the field tonight. Welcome to Professor Dr. Stefan Brunnthaler, Universität der Bundeswehr, München, Kai Hermsen, Global Coordinator for the Charter of Trust at Siemens, and our moderator, Philip Lark, Director of the Program on Cybersecurity Studies at George C. Marshall European Center for Security Studies. The protection of sensitive information, data, and communication is essential to every individual, company, political entity, and the military. Tonight, we will talk about traditional IT security, such as shields against malware or protection of cloud infrastructure and the Internet of Things. But we will also be talking about protection of connected machine systems in Industry 4.0 workspaces, especially the Charter of Trust initiated by Siemens during the Munich Security Conference in 2018, which is beneficial for corporate cooperation. And I'm sure we will get an explanation for what that means and how complicated it is to keep all players on board in this Charter of Trust by Kai Hermsen. And because our focus is especially on transatlantic issues, we will also address NATO and its security shield. NATO has identified cyber attacks as a key threat to the strategic alliance. So there's actually a lot to cover, but I'm sure our experienced moderator will maneuver us and the speakers through these important topics. So please meet Philip Lark. He is the Executive Director of the Cybersecurity Studies Program at George Marshall European Center for Security Studies, the only bilateral center, a partnership between the US Department of Defense and the German Federal Ministry of Defense. Philip Lark has over 30 years of experience in the cyber domain. I can't really believe that looking at you, but 30 years in cyber domain, but also international strategy and policy making, which is also an interesting topic I think we will cover tonight. And his research is not only focused on Europe, but also on Eurasia and Africa as well. So welcome to everybody again. And please, Philip Lark, the screen is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. This is really, we're so fortunate to have an opportunity to have this discussion on transatlantic cooperation, but to also have a dialogue between private industry, government, academia, as we look forward for greater opportunities to bring us together and greater entrepreneurship to be more successful. I would say that, I've been at the Marshall Center for 10 years. We've been doing cybersecurity now for almost 8 years at the Marshall Center uniquely. And the German-American partnership has brought thousands and thousands of cybersecurity experts from all over the world to Bavaria to be part of this unique place where we can be better together. What I want to do is get right into give our panelists an opportunity to talk. I'll come back later and give you an overview of some of the things that we've been doing, but I'd like to introduce our panelists. We're so fortunate to have them here tonight. First of all, I'd like to introduce Professor Stefan Brunnthaler. He's at the Code National Cyber Defense Research Institute at the Bundeswehr University in Munich, where he also directs the Munich Computer Security Systems Research Laboratory. Professor Brunnthaler received his doctorate from the Technical University in Wien, but also spent 4.5 years at the University of California, Irvine as a postdoctorate scholar. And moving back to Europe, he joined Paderborn University as a professor. I'm pleased he's right up the road where we can draw on his unique skills and knowledge. At Code, His team focuses primarily on basic research in software and system security, with a particular interest in language-based security to advance state-of-the-art software diversity. And we'll benefit all from the research of his team. I'd also like to introduce our second speaker, Mr. Kai Hermsen, the global coordinator for the Charter of Trust for Siemens, representing Siemens cybersecurity to external organizations such as the World Economic Forum, and particularly the Charter of Trust. He's responsible for implementing the Charter of Trust principles within Siemens and as a member of the Siemens Cybersecurity Board. Previously, he had been leading Siemens cybersecurity strategy. He's a father of two and a believer of technology has to serve the society to be of value, and cybersecurity is a key component of that. And I can tell you that tomorrow I'm going to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning and conduct a course with some Asia Pacific partners, and one of his colleagues from NTT Docomo is going to go talk to us about the Charter of Trust and how important this is and how it's cascaded globally. So I'm going to pause there, turn it over to Stefan, and let him give an intervention. We'll take a brief pause and then turn over to Kai for an intervention, followed by Q&A. And I'd encourage you to type in your Q&A. We'll get it to the speakers and take it from there. So, Stefan, over to you, please, for your intervention.
Thanks, Philip, for the introduction. Let me briefly start by explaining what CODE is and what the University of the Bundeswehr is. So Bundeswehr University is one of two federal universities in Germany. From a US perspective, it's basically kind of a, West Point meets Naval Postgraduate School meets German university. And CODE is kind of part of a concerted effort from multiple ministries. So it's the Ministry of the Interior, the Ministry of the Defense, and the Federal Intelligence Service, who have recognized the need to protect and to increase the presence in the digital realm. And so CODE is part of the Ministry of the Defense, and we are part of an academic research institute with 13 full professors dedicated to a wide spectrum of research activities and with a strong commitment to academic excellence. And what I think is particular about our cyber effort here is that we are co-locating Ministry of the Interior, Federal Intelligence Service, and Ministry of Defense here in our nice campus in the south of Munich. And before I start about the impulse, a minor caveat, I'm not a politician, I'm a scientist, and what's worse, I'm not even a political scientist, I'm a computer scientist. So this makes me qualified for the cybersecurity part, but please don't expect any deep revelations about realpolitik or geopolitical issues. So what I wanted to highlight to begin with is two parts. The whole event is the Transatlantic Innovation Week, and I wanted to highlight both parts. Transatlantic, as the introduction already mentioned, I spent 4.5 years in the United States, so I feel qualified highlighting what is transatlantic. So both sides of the Atlantic, in my interpretation, in my experience, have shared values. So we share common principles. We have a shared economic understanding. We share a deep appreciation, and we share the Enlightenment values in our respective societies. And we both appreciate the advances science has made and the benefits it will eventually have for economic and societal impact. And I think the key driver in this is our ability to innovate. So and that's how I think ties it with the Transatlantic Innovation Week, because we derive a lot of our societal and economic welfare from our ability to innovate. It's very strong on both sides of the Atlantic. And I personally also think that based on some of the issues and the problems we've seen in cybersecurity, that clearly our capability to innovate is at least somewhat at stake. So clearly we must do something in this domain to actually protect our investments in innovation, in education, in research, and so on and so forth. And from our shared values on the transatlantic perspective, I also want to briefly go into innovation. And I think innovation for me is always interesting because we need to protect our innovation assets. And cybersecurity is a key driver in that domain. And to me, innovation always means part of two perspectives. On the economic perspective, I like this citation that I found from Joseph Engelberger, who used to be a dominant United States roboticist. And he basically said there are three components to innovation. It's identifying a clear need, having competent people with the relevant technology and the financial backing. And clearly that's what we also see that needs protection through cybersecurity. And on a research perspective, I wanted to highlight that I think research often is just a numbers game. So there are two quotes that I like to drive this point home. And the one is from Thomas Alva Edison, says that I haven't failed. I found 10,000 ways that don't work. So he's basically casting this kind of arbitrariness into a positive state of mind. And there's another one from Werner von Braun that I like also. It basically says that research is what I'm doing when I don't know what I'm doing. And so from a policy perspective and also from an industry perspective, I think research needs to be both in depth and in breadth, also in cybersecurity. It's not like a single part of cybersecurity that if we solve this one part, all of the other parts will fall into place. The strength is more or less that we have multiple efforts and we basically try to create fertile grounds for cross-pollination to drive innovation later on. I think from our perspective, and I think for this panel it may be interesting, I feel that there are basically three barriers to innovation that we should consider. And I'm framing these in kind of supply chain issues. There is something that I'd like to call analog supply chain. It's basically our access to resources, rare earths, silicon, chip manufacturing, even agricultural stuff, lithium and so on and so forth. Without those resources, our capability to actually produce innovative goods is severely curtailed. And that also affects both sides of the Atlantic, the United States just as much as Europe does. Then I also see that there's a problem in human supply chain, or at least a problem on both sides of the Atlantic with a very strong commitment to top tier research, to leading research. And we need to ensure that this pipeline is filled. If we don't foster innovation in our educational system, in internationally leading educational systems, in top tier research universities, then our ability will be curtailed. And I guess this will only be something that's going to be much, much more important down the road with the demographic shift. And then I finally think we also see, and that is 2021 has really been a surprise to me in that respect, is intellectual property theft. Clearly of imminent danger for both sides of the Atlantic when it comes to our innovative capabilities. So we've invested a lot in research and development, and through leveling of the playing field, if you want to frame it positively by intellectual property theft, some of these advances can rapidly evaporate. And so I think the attacks that we've seen just in the past week or 2 weeks has been outstanding. And that's already all that I wanted to say as an impulse. So Philip, please, I'm looking forward to our discussion.
No, that's terrific. Thank you. Because those key themes not only are anchored in a transatlantic dialogue, but in my global work as well in terms of human capacities, values, and standards. Germany, Europe, and the transatlantic partnership look forward in the same direction to help the global South, to bring them on board, to make their lives better and advance quickly. And it's all those things, the analog, the intellectual property theft, human capital, and leadership to do it. And I'm proud to be part of a German-American partnership that gives us that leadership from a governmental perspective, but we also have that from a private industry perspective. And Siemens' role, I think, has been fantastic and a great supporter of what we've been doing over the years. So Kai, I'd like to turn it over to you to talk about the private industry perspective, because frankly, that intellectual property theft is targeted on companies like yours that are leading and cutting edge, and it has a great disadvantage, and really it fosters strategic great power competition. We're disadvantaged by these things. So Kai, over to you, please.
Thanks, Phil. Thanks for setting the stage, and Professor Brunnthaler for opening with your impulse speech. Now, first of all, thank you for having me to Amerikahaus and of course the US Consulate. And also thank you for making cybersecurity one of the focus topics of this Innovation Week. Of course, I might be biased as a cybersecurity expert, but I think that is really good because it's so relevant. And you know, the statement I want to start with and I want to give into this panel, you know, the panel is on competition versus cooperation. And I choose a different word. I choose collaboration. And I think collaboration is key for cybersecurity. And I go a step further. I'd like to say transatlantic collaboration is not only key for cybersecurity, but it is key for, you know, our well-being as a society. Because technology now, and especially fueled by the pandemic, is more important than ever. I mean, look at us. We're here online, on YouTube or on Zoom, using technology to be able to come together. And we depend much more on technology than we did even just 1.5 years ago. So, you know, cybersecurity grew in importance. Now, there's an issue, however, and that is there's also a growing distrust in technology. There's a growing distrust of people in technology they use. And that's an issue. Now, that's not just me saying that, but that's a study that was just issued by Munich Security Conference about 3 weeks ago. It was labeled 404, Trust Not Found. And what they found, well, is that this lack of technology will eventually lead to a lack of trust in institutions. And they even said it might eventually endanger, you know, our democratic values. So they were very clear in pinpointing that there is a danger in this lack of trust in technology. They found that Europeans, so it was a study in Europe, to be precise. So Europeans, 60% of Europeans feel less comfortable on the internet when navigating on the internet than just 1 or 2 years ago. So it's kind of worsening. And that is why cybersecurity is so important, because cybersecurity is about mitigating externalities in technology, and that mitigating these externalities can eventually build trust. So we believe cybersecurity is one of the core pillars that you need to build that trust. Now, the way we focus on cybersecurity at Siemens is twofold. One, of course, in our company, and then the second is in the Charter of Trust. Let me start with Siemens as a company. And you need to know that while we are, of course, at home in Europe, at home in Germany, to be more precise, even in Munich, we do see ourselves and we feel we are a transatlantic company, or even further, a global company. But let's focus on the transatlantic for the sake of this panel. 1/4 of our revenue is generated in North America, and we have 40,000 colleagues working for Siemens in North America, and many more, of course, in Europe. Now, as a corporation, we, of course, have the responsibility to protect our people, to protect our operations, and protect also the products and secure the products and solutions that we ship to customers. Now, that's exactly the area I work in. So I'm working in global cybersecurity. We have a global cybersecurity department in Siemens, which reports directly to the managing board. So over the past couple of years, you know, this department kind of has been, or the topics have been consolidated. So now we have a holistic cybersecurity strategy, bringing together all of these topics. And also the department, if you will, has been elevated. So now reporting to the managing board. And that development took place because cybersecurity as a topic became more important, right? And that's also why now you see that reflected in the organization. The thing we do is to take care of the doing of cybersecurity. And we do this with people in the US, in Europe, and also Asia. So there's a lot of doing, right? You know, mitigate the incidents, mitigate the threats, take care of our networks. The second topic is taking care of the governance. So really looking at the organization and fitting our cybersecurity strategy and operation in such a way that it fits the organization. We do this with a cybersecurity board. Phil already mentioned that I'm part of the cybersecurity board. So we all come together from the business perspectives, from the different businesses and from the different countries, and then discuss the governance going forward. And of course, it's about research. So we do have research on cybersecurity matters in Europe, in Germany, and also in the US, in Princeton, where we have research on cybersecurity. Now, what we realize there is that bringing these different perspectives together makes innovation better. So it's about diversity, not only in the research, but also in the doing. We do see different things. And if I can just say one sentence on the different perspectives, I do think, and what I witness is that in the US, there's of course a long history and a strong environment of IT companies and IT security. So there's a lot of knowledge on how to secure IT environments. And I think Europe brings a little bit more of a perspective on OT, operational technologies, and how to secure that. And now bringing this all together, that is really what, you know, collaboration is all about. Taking that one step further, 3 years ago, we said, okay, it's good, we collaborate very well within Siemens, but it might not be enough. You know, the level of attacks we saw, for example, in the year 2017 with WannaCry and NotPetya, was just, you know, frightening in a way, but also for us a wake-up call to say, we need to up our game. We need to take responsibility for cybersecurity beyond our own company borders. And that kind of was the impetus to say, then we need to think about working on cybersecurity differently. And that's when we had this idea together with other partners to form the Charter of Trust. So you already mentioned the Charter of Trust, and this is really a, you know, an initiative among global partners, but with a very strong transatlantic focus also, bringing together partners like Dell, IBM, Cisco, Siemens, of course, Allianz, Airbus, so really strongholds in their respective economies. In Asia, we do have NTT, you already mentioned NTT, there's MHI, Mitsubishi Heavy Industries, like bringing together these strongholds because we all felt we have a common challenge. We are very different as organizations and in very different industries, but we have a common challenge, and that is cybersecurity and really advancing cybersecurity beyond the state in which it is now. So we formulated 10 principles. They almost feel to us like they are kind of values, right? So they kind of bind us together. And along these common values, we now collaborate. And that is working fabulously well for us. It's a lot of fun. It brings us forward, and it gives us a voice, which is also very important because you see, cybersecurity is not just an economic topic, but it's also a political one to a certain extent. So it gives us the possibility to also have a voice and to speak, let's say, on behalf of the 17 partners and come up with concepts that are more convincing because they are already, let's say, sparred and aligned in a rather diverse group of companies. Right? And we bring these ideas forward, and sometimes, and more often than not, are also being asked for an opinion, which is very nice to see. So I think it all comes nicely together. And Phil, you said it earlier, when, you know, 3 years ago, when we launched the Charter of Trust, we of course had high hopes that this would really help us. Now, 3 years into this Charter of Trust, I think it went far beyond what we would have imagined back then. And we still feel it's very timely, you know. So sometimes I have these moments, for example, at the beginning of this year, when we heard about SolarWinds, and I was like, I'm very glad we did this, you know, some years ago, and we already work on answers for very current topics, for example, in supply chain security. Now, to wrap this up, and then what I really want to bring also to this panel and maybe to the listeners out there, what we learned is, what we think is that we need to take existing topics and existing knowledge and kind of build on it, strengthen it, for example, take the knowledge that we have over the years in IT security. I mean, this is not a new topic, right? Siemens has been doing cybersecurity for more than 30 years, but we need to take it and elevate it and further innovate and make it even stronger. Topic number one. Topic number two, we strongly believe in the diversity of perspectives. So diversity is beneficial for innovation. Might not always be that easy to manage, for example, diverse perspectives as we have them in the chart of trust, but it's worthwhile. It's worth the effort. And if you have a common value set, it is possible. So that is really about common values. We also believe cybersecurity needs to be thought human-centric. So rather than saying humans are the weakest link, which I think is a wrong statement in many kinds of ways, we think in the chart of trust that we need to make humans and users part of the solution, not part of the problem. And that being said, this is also a call to the policymakers out there and to the authorities to have that awareness. In the end, cybersecurity is as much about people as it is about technology. Now, I'd like to close with that. So hopefully it came across, I'm a firm believer that collaboration and proactive thought leadership is key to cybersecurity. For our biggest vulnerability could be to stand still and not be progressive on cybersecurity.
Kai, thank you very much. This is terrific comments and complements nicely what Stefan said. And one of the things that I think that I see in our global capacity building work at the Marshall Center, and where the Transatlantic Partnership can outcompete anyone, it's in values, principles, and focused on people. As I like to say, I'm a cybersecurity person, but really I'm in the people business. And where we've seen the best collaboration in going forward and moving the Transatlantic Partnership closer together is exactly on the things you talked about. Sharing values, sharing principles, and focused on people. So a lot of our work is making citizens more aware on workforce development and education. And these things all come together here, particularly in Bavaria, but in that Transatlantic Partnership where things have improved and been steadily getting better over time. And I'll give an example or two. You talked briefly about privacy and security. Well, one thing is you mentioned there was always some distrust of using the internet. Well, Europe was far ahead of the United States in having a regulatory scheme with the General Data Protection Regulation where citizens could take more control of their information. Well, that's also a values and principle driven activity. And I'm pleased to say that the Transatlantic Partnership is getting better on that and working through our institutional capacity building efforts globally, the European Union, certainly NATO within Europe, and with the Americans supporting these, what I'll call cascading valued and principled activities going on. Stefan, I know within the university system and your research, you have a wide variety of not only governmental partners, but also private business partners. And I know that these principles return time and time again in terms of the work and how you implement that. I want to go back to you, and we're going to have a question here, but Stefan, please, if you wouldn't mind commenting on that, that'd be great.
I'm terribly sorry, there was a glitch, so I didn't get the question on my internet connection.
Yeah, no worries. What I wanted to say is that at Code and your research institute, you have a wide variety of governmental partners, but also businesses. And as you do research, these transatlantic principles, as you talked about and Kai talked about, repeatedly come back. Privacy and security, human-centric approaches, and the research that you're doing has a global impact. So my question comes back in, as you're doing your research, how is this affecting this transatlantic partnership that's values and principles based?
So thanks. I think there are many of these topics that keep reoccurring. So first of all, a lot of our research and especially in cybersecurity, it's also like something that Kai just mentioned. So the United States have had a very fruitful and a good tradition in cybersecurity. And during my stay at the University of California in Irvine, I had the honor of working and participating in 2 DARPA projects. And I think even through the instrument of NATO, it's very important that European research institutes, and there's very, very good cybersecurity research in Europe and across Europe, can actually participate in these programs from DARPA. And that, I think, also helps in building shared values, and also for the European part of benefiting from the kind of can be at times very far out challenges that are being addressed by DARPA. And so there are many European performers that are now working as contractors or subcontractors in DARPA. And I think that helps a lot in our research activities. Like, for instance, DARPA has this outstanding track record in groundbreaking research, in whether that be self-driving cars, cyber grand challenge, the internet, and so on and so forth. And I think, also what Kai mentioned before, I think these values and the privacy issues that we're seeing, I think the distrust, so would be much more interesting to get into the details of the study. The distrust people have is just because of many of the negative experience they have been disappointed also during Corona, when there's a big scandal in Germany about some software that is not doing what it should be doing and claims to be doing what it doesn't do. And so there's a lot of distrust when it comes to these things. So I think actually this in the United States, people have always been much more trustful towards the systems. I think that is it's not a fundamental difference. It's just a more less critical, a more positive attitude towards change, I guess.
Well, Stefan, I don't know if they're more trustful or just ignorant because they just say, I want my phone to work and connect. Well,
people say this about, they say it about here also. I mean, that this is not the difference I was hinting at, but it's certainly something that I'm, much more aware of, and something that also, especially in Europe, I think has gotten a lot more media coverage during the political campaigns in the past couple of years in the United States, and the influence. Sometimes I think I was quite surprised to figure out that some of the big social networks are not necessarily interacting to the United States interests. And so I think this naturally leads to the question like if a United States company not necessarily acts in United States interests, maybe it doesn't really act according to European interests as well. So I think that puts social networking a lot more into the questionable light around here.
Yeah, thank you on that. We have a question from the audience, and I want to push it to Kai because it really relates to, competition of threats of state actors to cybersecurity, intellectual property theft, and innovation and entrepreneurship. Can you comment on who and maybe where are the biggest threats? You don't have to, don't feel pressured to name names on this, but you can talk about maybe where do you see those threats coming from? Because they're certainly persistent and out there continuously. Yeah.
But the way I'd like to answer this question is to not only go in that direction, but also go in a second direction, which we witnessed at the same time. So yes, there's state actors or very targeted actors that have a certain, idea on why they are attacking, right? And then there's actors that, well, they also have an idea, but it's not that targeted, right? It's more broad. It's more going to whomever is, weak, so to say. And I think both are the reality of the threats we see today. And by and large, the threat level is rising, right? So that's, you can say that on both sides, threat level is rising. Now, to be more precise, of course, we do look into exactly, so where are the threats coming from, which kind of group can it be attained to? So we have people that do nothing else than look into this, who are very active in also sharing with other companies, with authorities on, okay, what's the kind of threat level? there is, I think the whole threat intelligence landscape has improved. So that's part of collaboration, actually, kind of how, you interact with others. So, but what I want to say is, I think it's both. It's very targeted attacks where there's clear interests behind, and then there's a lot of, effort and even resources going into a very specific project, if you will, right? And the creativity of some of these folks is unfortunately very high. Right? So this is a reality. And then there's these broad attacks, the ransomware attacks. And now what that means, also these ransomware attacks, is that in this day and age, no company, no matter how big or small, can say, look, I don't have anything to hide. Who should attack me, right? And that's, I think, part of the changed reality is that maybe in previous times, one could have said, look, of course, as a Siemens, we are big, we have a name, we have a brand, so we might be targeted by certain actors, right? So that was always the case. But as a small and medium enterprise, one could have said, look, I'm so small, I don't have anything to hide. There's also not much that they can get here, right, in terms of IP. So why should I be attacked? Now that game has changed, because now we also have the ransomware, which is kind of just spreading far and kind of hits the companies and the organizations, not only companies, also NGOs, or also private people like you and me. We're being hit by, by these ransomware attacks or phishing attacks. Identity theft is a new problem. So this landscape, you see, is moving. And in this day and age, each and every organization needs to take care of their cybersecurity. And that's kind of the reality. And that's something that we worry about. And that's also why we feel there is a certain form of responsibility on our side to react to this new threat reality.
That's terrific. I want to take another question from the audience for Professor Brunnthaler. Stefan, how is the academic framework in Germany or the EU in cybersecurity? And what best practices have you been able to learn or cooperate from the United States? And I'll even turn it around the other way. What things have you been able to teach those your partners and peers in the United States that they may not be aware of that are exclusive and unique to Europe?
Thanks for your question. So I think Germany has always had a very strong academic landscape. And I think at present, nowadays, not only the Ministry of Defense and the Ministry of the Interior, but also the Ministry of Education and Research they have created very strong centers only in Germany. So, but they are also across Europe. There are many of these centers, like there's very strong cybersecurity research in the Netherlands, very strong research in France, very strong research in Italy, in the Switzerland, But Germany alone has now, a Max Planck Center for Cybersecurity in Bochum. There is also Ruhr University Bochum has had a very strong center. Darmstadt has one, University of Saarland has one. So now there's multiple different research perspectives. And so I think this is creating unique opportunities also, as Kai mentioned, for companies. So, there's Germany's often called a country of hidden champions, where there are small, medium enterprises that have a lot of knowledge that needs protection. And now there's very easy access to these universities, to these cybersecurity centers that are dedicated to conducting basic research that we need. And I think from a European landscape, what I'm missing most is having an agency or body that's like DARPA. I mean, once you've witnessed the power that DARPA has and the way it works, it's really, really something. So it's not surprising if you see how the sausage is made, what is needed to get to these DARPA-style groundbreaking research results. And I'm very sorry to say that European Union doesn't have anything comparable in that respect. And clearly we need to up our game. Would also be good to integrate these diverse perspectives that Kai mentioned, for European integration, but also to get to these groundbreaking results that we need. And going back to what we can teach the transatlantic side, I think there are some of the issues that we've been trying or that we see that I think are quite promising and will deliver in 10, 15, 20 years, or it's already starting now, but it's going to be quite a game changer, I think, is this focusing concentration across multiple ministries, trying to bring down bureaucracy, translating research results. And I think this co-location that the policy decision in Germany focuses on, that is something that I'm, to the best of my knowledge, I'm not aware that any other nation is currently doing in that realm.
Yeah. So Stefan, just to give some of the audience, DARPA is a defense investment organization where strategic investments are put on groundbreaking research. So academics put in research proposals, some done in their, professors saying, I have a proposal and I want to see if I can get it funded. Some to support activities that the Department of Defense specifically needs. But these are long-term strategic investments to nurture and cascade basic science into something applicable, largely for Department of Defense. But many of these technologies have gone on to benefit everyone else, such as the internet. So we're lucky to have this. One of the things I want to highlight, though, is they're not only technical challenges and technical opportunities, which has gone on in this transatlantic league. I want to talk a little bit about what we're doing at the Marshall Center that talks a little bit about values, strategy, policy development, and this broad whole of government and whole of society approach that's happening. So the real value of this transatlantic cybersecurity and in technology is how all this comes together. It's not just cybersecurity. It's not just engineering. It's strategy. It's policy. And it all comes together through the innovation that we've sort of developed on this value-based approach, where sometimes investments are made and they fail, so research is done and nothing comes of it. And people are saying this is a good investment anyway. So, but on the strategy and policy portion, where Germany and the United States and this transatlantic partnership are doing something unique. So I'm hosting with a partner at the Asia Pacific Center, our partner center out in Hawaii. 22 countries are getting together from Vanuatu to Sri Lanka, where we're talking about the things we're talking about tonight: cybersecurity, strategy and policy development, talking about the Charter of Trust. So we're bringing those values and principles to partners that might not otherwise have it. And I have a little unique German connection tonight. So one of the countries that's involved in this is Palau. The German connection there was part of, was it Eastern New Guinea or just Southern German New Guinea from about the 1850s to 1914. And this small little Pacific Island nation of 14,000 people is participating because they're starting to want to learn more about values, education, and training, everything we've talked about here in a small Pacific Island nation. And their German connection is, I think, terrific that I could bring it with you today that, here we are, a bunch of Bavarians and, Germans writ large because of cyberspace that we're helping this island country get organized to think through some of these problems. And they'll start in the basics, which will be education. So I think that's a unique opportunity there for us to talk about. And speaking of training and education and workforce development, I'd like to go to Kai. And Kai, can you talk about how does Siemens as a company with the Charter of Trust leading that effort rope in education and training and workforce development to make your enterprise better? And certainly, I know, Stefan, you can certainly talk about this, but Kai, let's hear about what's going on with private industry and what initiatives the Charter of Trust is doing with that.
Yeah, thanks, Phil. And this is really a topic that's close to my heart, education on cybersecurity, because I dearly believe that good cybersecurity is only possible if we take people along, if we take the users along, and also only if we take our experts along, right? So we have to educate on all of these levels, expert education, and also for everyone else. We in the Chart of Trust, we said we need to educate from preschool to post-retirement on cybersecurity. And there's a variety of formats that we apply and that we think about. So let me talk about that, this, let's say, from our perspective, let's say more external part, right? Because of course, within Siemens, we do have, yearly training programs for everyone, for all the employees. And of course, we have expert level training programs that I think are very sophisticated. But let's look more to the, let's say, the wider societal part, if you will. There's a couple of examples on what we do. For example, here in Germany, Siemens has a lot of youngsters that go through the dual education system that's very unique also to Germany, where they learn kind of on the job. So now there in these programs, we include cybersecurity as a curriculum, because at Siemens we do have some influence on what this curriculum looks like, and we started this some years ago to include now cybersecurity also into these programs, giving cybersecurity to experts, to on-the-job experts that are not coming only from the academic track, right? So we kind of spread this cybersecurity beyond the academic track, because most of the cybersecurity experts are, of course, coming from university. But we need to think about alternative strategies also, because the demand for cybersecurity experts is so high, and we need these people to know about cybersecurity. Another initiative we have started is actually in the UK, which is called Cyber First. So it's an initiative run by the NCSC, and now Siemens is partaking in there. And the beauty of this approach is it's targeting young women, right? So female youngsters, and there's a whole program around how to bring more girls, young women into cybersecurity, and maybe fascinate them for the topic of cybersecurity. And they really have been doing a great job for the last 3, 4, 5 years, I think. And it's kind of this, public-private partnership, and through the Chart of Trust, and through seeing that some other Chart of Trust partners already partook in this initiative, like IBM and Cisco, they've been already part. We learned about this initiative much more, and then Siemens UK also became part of this program. And that's exactly what we'd like to see, because you see, if you think about it, cybersecurity can really also be a driver of change, right? And for inclusion and for more diversity. And if you think about this, we are then turning a challenge, and that's the shortage of cybersecurity experts, into an opportunity, into something where we can include young people into the workforce, where we can include young women into the workforce, or where we can also help older employees to kind of refocus, reshift their attention from maybe something that they have learned, and educate them on cybersecurity, and give them a new perspective to navigate in this, more digital economy. And that's really why education is key, because it's good for us as a company, because we need these people. It's good for all the organizations, because the demand is so high on cybersecurity experts, and it's very good for society, because we can, by way of doing this, do good also from a, people dimension for society. And that's really the fascination of cybersecurity meeting education, and then you work with it.
Oh, that's terrific. Well, one of the things I always like to do is, if you had 3 minutes and you were riding in an elevator with the chancellor or the president, and you had 2 tips that you would give to them to bring the transatlantic partners closer together, what would those tips be that you would have to share with the chancellor or the president, saying, hey, if we were to cascade, foment, bring Europe and America closer together so we can have a combined greater influence and leadership role in the future in the next 30 to 50 years, what would be those 1 or 2 tips that you'd give to either senior leaders we go forward? Because I think they benefit from hearing it from experts like you, because sometimes it doesn't get unfiltered. So Stefan, I'm going to you first as an academic, and you've been in the United States. You've seen what the big university system, you're at one of the top universities in Europe now. So what would you tell the chancellor, in her last few months here, say, Madam Chancellor, this is what we really need. So over to you.
Thanks. A great question. I like this kind of, like if you hypothetical Gedanken experiment style questions. I think if I were to be able to say 2 things, one is clearly we need a European DARPA, because like we've seen what kind of breakthrough research is possible. And the other one is basically going back to what Kai just said. And I have always been, and I am very strong in favor of bringing diversity into research. We have a demographic shift, and we cannot just say, okay, this is only for the boys. We need girls, we need minorities. A plurality of insight is something that we need, and the sooner our politicians understands this, the better this is going to be in the long run. So it's like 2 things.
Perfect.
Like my wish list. Not even 3 minutes.
So excellent. So Kai, President Biden's walking on the elevator. They've done the fist bump. Now we're going back down to the ground floor. Over to you.
Well, imagining that is mind blowing, but yeah, I do that. So I think really the only thing I could say is, of course, speaking for cybersecurity, and there's so many more topics out there in the world that are equally, if not more important, right? But focusing on cybersecurity, I'd really say, look, we have a common purpose that is shared across the transatlantic, and that's really elevating trust in technology so that people in society also trust more the institutions and maybe even, technological development and change in its entirety, and that common purpose, if we fill that with common values and then collaborate for it across the Atlantic, but also within our own regions, then I think we can really make an impact, and we need to start now. And then we're on ground floor, I guess.
No, that's great. One of the things I always say is it's the bring a friend approach, and that friend, whether it's from Europe, from the global South, it's bringing people together that makes all the difference in the world. And while all these technology things, we've been able to meet thousands of new people in doing events like this, ultimately nothing is better than sitting across a table and having a chat and getting that human experience. And we know we're going to be sort of gummed up or, still clunking for some time into the future. But eventually, the tip I would give is when you have the opportunity to get people together, especially people from far away, you have to grasp that opportunity. And speaking of grasping opportunities, I want to thank Stefan, Kai, Amerikahaus, and our sponsors today for giving us an opportunity. And you, the participants who decided to spend your Thursday night not watching another rerun, but listening to a bunch of academics and business leaders, out there talking about this. It's important that these type of dialogues in cybersecurity, technology, and this transatlantic partnership, I would not be here, certainly in Germany, and certainly being an advocate for global cooperation between Germany and the United States beyond transatlantic, and when our countries are having a major impact. This is also a nice suggestion I can say is we want you to come back because Amerikahaus is going to be hosting additional events in the future on technology and science, and one particular in cybersecurity on the 22nd of June, where we're going to talk about strategic competition. I'm proud to be a resident, a long-term resident, and be involved in cybersecurity. Bavaria is a special place, and the German-American transatlantic partnership in cybersecurity is unmatched. Technology people, citizens, strategy and policy, but the best thing of all is just nice people to be around. So thank you to the sponsors. And I'd just like to say, you're going to be done enough time to get yourself a drink before the 8 o'clock news. So thank you everyone for participating tonight. I've benefited from just the experience, Stefan and Kai. I want you to come down to Garmisch, you know, when we can take a mask off and enjoy a beer. You know, the first one's on me. So thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, I follow that invitation for sure. Thanks, Bill, for hosting, and thanks, Amerikahaus.
Thank you.